I'd say the biggest single word that I think is the most important word, which is also probably going to be a relief to people dealing with the question of will AI replace my job? AI
Sure.
won't replace your job, it'll change your job. But empathy is the word that's in my mind. A big difference between a good marketer and a good product person is empathy. Can you put yourself in the shoes of that customer?
Welcome to Founder Mode. What's up, Kevin?
How are you, buddy? Good to see you.
I'm good. I'm excited. Today, we're diving into one of the most critical and sometimes confusing phases for any startup: 0 to 1 marketing. We don't have that Peter on. We have a different Peter on the show today, and I'm pretty excited about it. What do we actually need to get those first critical users when you have no team, no budget, maybe barely a product? I'm just excited to hear from this guy. He's somebody that you know. Are you fired up?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it's easy to get overwhelmed by all the marketing advice out there. And I think it's one of those things, if you start searching, the algo feeds you more than you want to know. And I think it doesn't just apply to when you're starting out. I mean, like there's constantly the market's changing and what the market wants to hear and what the market wants to see. And sort of being able to pick up those signals and then being able to make the right adjustments and adjust to, how to go do that. And so I think it's the perfect sort of, kickoff to somebody who's, at any stage of the company. But I think it really means the most when you're just starting out and you sort of have that resource sort of constraint to work through.
Yeah, that's right. And as a career marketing and growth guy, I'm particularly excited about this episode. And what I think is cool is, you and I are like, the yin and yang in the startup land. Like you got to figure out your product, that's you, and you got to figure out your distribution, and that's me. So when we're thinking about marketing in the context of a technical founder like yourself, what are you looking for? What do you think, like when you are interviewing marketers or kind of getting presented a marketing plan, they're like, hey, I'm going to do this stuff. What's going through your head?
Yeah, and I'm kind of a quiet marketer or like a technical nerd on this stuff. So like to me, the big thing is just tracking. Like, do you
Right.
know that it's working? So some sort of attribution, some sort of understanding of, is what we're sending out there going? And then the other thing I'm looking for is, are you testing enough things quick enough?
Right.
And then is there a feedback loop? And so for me, it's like, hey, let's try a bunch of stuff. Let's not spend a lot of time on those things, track them so we understand it, and then feed that back in so that we can kind of learn and double down on the ones that are working.
Yeah, I love
So,
that.
but I mean, for Jason, I mean, this is your jam. Like
Yeah.
marketing is your thing. And so, for tech folks out there, like, what do you think about this and how is that, and how is AI changing this?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about this a lot on this show, but in particular, AI is transformative and highly disruptive to marketing and marketing teams and marketers. And we'll talk to Peter when we interview him, but there's this fear that, well, I'm a copywriter or I'm a content marketer or I'm a designer and these tools are going to take my job. No, they're not. I can tell you from personal experience that what's happening is the people that are crushing it right now are using these tools to make themselves superhuman. They're taking the image generation and allowing it to create all sorts of concepts and ideas as a designer and then iterating on those. So now instead of doing, one really cool brand concept for a client, you can do a dozen at this in the same amount of time, and AI helps you do that. If you're a content marketer or a copywriter, instead of like slaving over the exact wording you want to use, you use AI to generate ideas for you and then turn those ideas into written concepts that you, human writer, helped craft and shape and give an essence to. And so those are specific creative examples. And then I think on the growth strategy and marketing strategy, go to market, product marketing, it all still applies. Like AI is a super accelerator of ideas and helps you be your sparring partner as a marketer to figure out what to do and do it faster.
Yeah, I think of it a lot as just having like a team of like really excited junior interns in your sort of,
Exactly.
stable, right? You're like sitting at the table, and now instead of like being alone at the whiteboard or just two people in the room, you've got a team with energy around it, and you just need to know how to harness that energy and make sure that you keep the things on track. The feedback that it gives, those tools are not perfect, but so sometimes you have to direct them. But having that sort of additional sort of weapon to use, I think, has been pretty impactful for where I've seen it go so far.
I totally agree. And I know that you feel the same way about what it's doing for engineering. And so I think this is just going to happen across every discipline, whether you're a marketer or you're a software engineer or you're a product manager, embrace the tools, embrace the innovation happening, the pace of it. I was reading the things that Sam Altman wish he had known sooner list. So it always makes the rounds right on social. I see the the X post, and like I reread it again, I think this morning. And one of the things was like, if you move fast, you can make a lot more mistakes. And like AI is just making you move faster. Like it gives you more shots on goal, right? So we're going to talk to Peter today. I would love to know, the things that you and he worked on together in the Accompli days, pre-AI hustle. Like, what's the stuff that really jumped out for you, and that you feel like this is what good marketing is, this is what a good marketer does?
Yeah, and so I mean, Peter and I worked together at Accompli. He ran marketing for us, and I think a bunch of really cool campaigns. We did a pretty cool video that hopefully we'll have time to talk about. We did this Rock the Doc campaign where it was like this, a screenshot of Accompli the app in your doc, your kind of like bottom four on your iPhone, and then post that to Twitter. And this is like in the days where like going viral on Twitter was very different than it is today.
Right.
I think the other thing that Peter was incredibly good at was just, a great sparring partner on content and wordsmith. He had this like art with the pen, and that was always like this sort of incredible thing. But again, it was, we were hustling, man. We were trying to figure it out. We weren't really sure, we had to build websites and WordPress and setting all these stuff up. And so we had a lot of interaction from engineering and marketing of like how to set this up, how to do tracking, and how to work through it. And it was just really fun to kind of go through that and work with him on it.
That's a perfect segue, Kevin. We've got Peter Farago with us today. Peter is a seasoned marketing leader who has navigated the 0 to 1 phase multiple times, including as CMO with you at Accompli, where he worked alongside an awesome team that then led to a $200 million plus acquisition from Microsoft. He also led marketing at Flurry Analytics through its acquisition by Yahoo. And if anyone knows what really matters in early stage marketing, both pre and post AI buzz, it's definitely Peter. So let's get into it. Peter, welcome to Founder Mode.
Hey, how's it going? Nice to meet you.
It's great. Great to have you, and great to meet you as well. And you and Kevin known each other a minute, but we're new friends. You've seen marketing evolve like pretty dramatically over the 20 plus years you've been in the Valley.
Yeah.
Especially in those early days. When you hear 0 to 1 marketing, what's like the core, first principles stuff that comes to mind for you and for these founders that are listening to us today?
I think it's know your audience, know the value you're trying to describe to them, say it in the words that audience wants to hear it or needs to have it told to them. I think those are the core things. People will talk about value proposition and messaging and positioning, and that's all true. But I think it starts with understanding that audience and the value you're bringing them and expressing that really well. You're going to keep trying to express that several different ways. There'll be lots of iterations and lots of different ways you do it. But that's the key.
Peter, great to have you on. I mean, thinking back to our Accompli days, it's been a minute. We were jumping into like this crazy crowded market, right? There was, 50 email apps. If you remember, what was the first marketing move we made? Like before we even have a polished product, trying to, nothing was really ready. Like just trying to figure it out. Like how did we kind of break through?
Well, there's two parts I think about. One was, what you guys had already was a really fast iteration cycle where you were pushing out like at breakneck speeds. You were pushing out weekly releases and you had a pretty large beta audience. So as far as understanding, call it the feature set and the things that were resonating and, having already some built-in, this is still a little bit of early days of social, but built-in kind of audience for trying to drive word of mouth organically, that was all kind of there. What we didn't have was, I'd say kind of it was really lacking fit and finish. It looked like a half engineering page, landing page that was thrown up there. The logo was like clip art, but that's pretty normal. The main thing was just trying to get that story polished. Who are we? What was the value prop? Who are we really competing with? I think in the end, it wasn't so much other apps. It was the iPhone's native app, the client that shipped with it, that was really honestly like the no decision for consumers. It was sort of like, hey, it's on here, it works. Oh, I didn't know email could be so good on a mobile phone. Oh, I'll just use this. But we had different aspirations. And so we ended up, I think the positioning was around, it was like email just got a promotion and it was do more, defer less. Because we were speaking to a knowledge worker, a professional worker who we felt didn't want to triage their email. They didn't want to just kind of, swipe and delete stuff until they could actually get to their desk and get anything done. And what you guys had built, and this is what the beta audience was showing us, was you guys could schedule things. You could always schedule really effectively. You could share your schedule with someone. You could do calendar, right? Calendar negotiation. You guys could attach files, all these things, and you were totally interoperable. So that was really a big deal. And, if you think about a professional at work, going back to back to back meetings, this way they could get stuff done during the meetings, between meetings, in the hallway, whatever. And then they wouldn't have like 10 hours of meetings and then have to go home and do 5 hours of email and then get their actual work done.
Yeah. I love the idea that like we had a kind of crappy logo, so we up leveled it, but you're really saying like we figured out what the value was that we brought, and then we connected that with our audience and put together some messaging that would resonate with them. So that hits home for me as a career marketer. I love that. And then, you've led marketing, Peter, from pre-revenue to significant exits multiple times. Founders, they struggle with knowing what to market when the product is still evolving. How do you think about crafting the initial message or story when things are still so fluid?
So a lot of it, again, is that, how do you sell or market when it's not fully baked and it's evolving? And so again, it's like kind of that North Star vision you're going after, and you're building that. And it doesn't happen all at once. There's a lot of iteration. Like if you make a set of assets, one of the things I like about being early and doing a lot of things myself is I write the press release, I write the boilerplate for it, I write the, all the homepage copy, right? You do the, you help with a product deck and emails out and you keep getting lots of attempts to keep trying to explain it over and over, and things come out over time, like where again you're extracting it more from the founders, like the positioning and the story and the narrative exists. I have to extract it more. The other thing I'll say, it happens to me a lot, and I'm in an AI company now with professors and PhDs in AI and whole careers in it. Similarly at Accompli, these guys, been there, done that team who still wanted to win. And in particular, JJ and Kevin had built email successfully across several platforms. And so, starting back at OpenWave and so on, and then Zimbra. And so they had made email first, like as a client, then in the cloud, and now they were doing it in mobile. And so this team had crazy domain experience, and I did not. So, my job is not to understand like the domain as deeply as they do, but to think about somebody from the outside, a potential customer, and how they might look at the value we're going to bring. So there's this translation I'm doing, and I'm not trying to become an expert at the same level because I can't, and it's also not my job. But I am extracting and shaping a story, and I am focused. It's like when you're driving, you're looking down the road, not like down at your bumper.
Yeah, I mean, founders also kind of feel this pressure to do everything. Like, do you remember back, like, or maybe even today, when you're looking at your current company, what things you explicitly decided not to do? And how do you kind of make that decision of like, there's content, social, PR, paid ads, there's just a bunch of ways. I think, Peter, I think the one thing that I always remember, and just you're an incredible writer, right? And so I think you mentioned earlier, like, hey, a lot of this is writing, right? You're creating content, whether it's blogs, website copy, social copy, emails, etc. Like, how do you kind of decide like what not to focus on when you're sort of looking at sort of crafting that initial message and sort of deciding like what channels or where to get this out there?
Yeah. Someone early in my career described marketing as assets and distribution. So like I think about the content, the writing, those are all assets. And then you're mentioning like how you get it out there. I think about that as the distribution, the promotion. And I usually start with the assets. And thank you about the comment for writing. I talk a lot. And so writing is a way to clear my head, honestly, and shape things better and get it straight for myself, and also show people to get feedback. And then there's an art of like writing. Like a website is not like anything you write. It's like lots of little phrases and snippets, and it's all kind of put together in this, gestalt thing. And so it's a little bit of a weird thing. But where I usually start is loosely it's an audit. I guess it's informal. Normally it's like, does the company have enough of a brand look and feel that I can work with? And I've worked on some very expensive high-end stuff, like my consumer days at Electronic Arts and stuff. We spent unreal amounts of time and money developing brand assets.
Always fun.
At a startup, it's like, you just need to be good enough and really professional. It's really about credibility. Is this company going to be around in 5 years, especially if you're doing B2B stuff? That's what matters. So usually it's this audit of like, do we have a set of assets that kind of look like they work together? They don't have to reinforce each other and have, all this positioning and messaging tree stuff. Like you can get very ornate with that, but at a startup, it's like directionally it fits together. Then as far as getting out and the distribution of it, I kind of think about like, it's a little bit of like what's working today. And it's a little bit of like, what is the company a candidate for? And so like an example is a company I was at before Accompli was called Flurry. They did mobile application analytics. So we had like 90%, we like own the market. And we had, as a result, all this data about consumers, how they downloaded and used apps and retention rates across all these categories. So we told a lot of, and our customer was a developer, an app developer. So we told a lot of data stories that would help them with their business as far as like acquisition, engagement, retention, monetization. And that's kind of where our products lined up. So that company was a candidate for thought leadership based on data-backed stories. Our company, obviously was not. We tried some blogging and some insights to try to build up, a little bit of a following, but that was very hard. Social worked for us pretty well because we had a lot of influential people that you guys had built up in the beta in sort of back then, like Product Hunt was still big. So we pushed on Product Hunt because people were looking for buzzy consumerish products. So then, for a launch, it was like, let's do that.
We've talked about in previous episodes, this idea of building this network. So as a kind of CMO across multiple businesses, leading marketing growth, you've had to build this network of people that are really, really skilled that can go do this and tell interesting stories and across different channels in the right way. I want to double click on the idea of breaking through, because I think when you talk about like an Apple brand spot, that's what people think of as like, how do we think different, right? How do we show up in a different way? Is there like a signal or early pieces of feedback from customers that really helps you, especially in these 0 to 1 phases, maybe at Flurry or HackerOne, that fundamentally changed how you approach marketing or even product direction? And bonus points, like Flurry, I just want to call out 2014, acquired by Yahoo for a ton of money. Like, dude, you've got a great track record here. So I think for founders listening, like there's some nuggets that I just want to make sure pay attention. Peter has seen some stuff, right? So what do you say to like customer gives you an insight that actually makes its way into the product or marketing strategy?
That's interesting. I mean, look, part of what I'll first say is I can't pick well. If you've done investing or joined a bunch of startups, like you kind of know especially with your own work, you're putting your egg in one basket for several years. So I do try to figure out if the team has something, right? Like, I think it's like, are they going at the most important thing is, are they going after the most interesting market they can? And do they have something quote unquote disruptive? I like disruptive stuff because I like to kind of tell here's how things are now, here's how things are going to change, like the today, tomorrow story. So the caveat up front is I am looking for companies trying to take big swings who have great teams. And, you don't always know. I've been at many startups. One was like not what I thought it was. And it was a mess, but such as startup life. Your question exactly, Jason, was what do I tell
it was basically
founders?
like, how do you think about breaking through
The breakthrough. Yeah.
taking, signal that
Right.
especially
The
like
signal, the
customer
feedback
signal,
loop, right.
user signal in 0 to 1 and like pulling out an insight and saying, oh, you know what, this user is telling us something really interesting here. Let's apply that to the go-to-market, to the product strategy, to how we're talking about this. If there's something that jumps out, I'd love to hear it.
No. There's a lot. There's a lot. I guess I'm thinking about it because I guess the first thing is I'd say the biggest single word that I think is the most important word, which is also probably going to be a relief to people dealing with the question of will AI replace my job? AI won't replace your job. It'll change your job. But empathy is the word that's in my mind. So what I find, Kevin went to good schools. I went to good schools. I have fancy degrees. I worked at big companies. But like a big difference between a good marketer and a good product person is empathy. And what I mean is like, can you put yourself in the shoes of that customer and like, what's their pain? What's their aspiration? What are the dynamics like at work for them to make a decision? How easy are you making it for them to try you and make a decision? So like that momentum piece is really, I think it comes from somehow understanding the customer really well. Signals come from lots of places. The best is if you can use the product yourself, honestly. But I work on a lot of stuff I can't use. Like if I went to Cursor today.
How did that work for us? Like with Accompli, right? Like we had this sort of product engineering sort of marketing loop. And like, I think the nice thing about emails, we did use the product, right? But like, does that work today in the company you're working at today? Like, are you the same kind of user that you were as an email user?
Well, we had a thesis at Accompli that, people wanted to get things done and they wanted to, Javier had a pretty clear story or distilled down into like, find things easier, right? That kind of thing. He had a list of a few things. So that thesis was pretty well understood and we were building in that direction and we're getting positive feedback. In fact, I think you set up Kevin, you were particularly good at feedback loops. I think we were getting lots of feedback from a lot of different places. How I do it today is we record all our calls, sales calls, and I listen to a lot of sales calls and I pull transcripts and run them through ChatGPT. And then I try to separate the garbage answers from the good answers. And now we have really good impact for our early set of customers, meaning our stuff really works well. So now I'm doing interviews for case studies, success stories. And, that's actually quite different than a sales call where I walk them through, I'm trying to extract a story from them, but it's really a very simple problem solution results kind of story. So it's like what we're using before, what made you decide you needed to fix something, what did you look at? What did you choose? What was your first experience like with us? So I'm actually now getting the benefit of walking people through very carefully and understanding the buying criteria, substitutes, alternatives, competition. Again, we're in a world where people are just kind of doing it themselves. That's a lot of what we compete against is DIY versus like an actual established competitor. While the product is technical today, the one I work on, what we do is actually pretty straightforward from a value. We answer technical questions that users have. That's kind of basically what we
I
do.
love that you're talking to customers and you're listening to sales calls. Like every time I talk to a founder or a marketing leader or a product or engineering leader who doesn't do that, I'm like, this company's probably not going to make it, right? And so it just makes my heart happy to hear
That's
that, and
good.
like it bodes well for RunLLM. You're in this kind of noisy AI infra market. Can you walk us through the non-scalable experiments, the channels, the messages, the community
Yeah.
hacks that you kind of think about and have run in the early days? And what did you decide? Like, what was your approach and your framework for deciding on what do I double down on? What do I kill? What is
Yeah.
that kind of North Star metric that's like, oh man, we found it?
That's interesting. I'm looking for it now. I've gone through and reset the story and have a better version of the website. And I'm doing it again in the background again because it's not where it needs to be. And we are starting to and we are driving some organic inbound leads. So it's a B2B company in the end. And we actually weren't sure. In fact, in the last several months, we were like, are we going to be more PLG and having high volume, like just have to really work on growth and conversion? Premium upsell, or are we going to like get to the mid market sooner than we think, which is actually what's happening. There's compression. Bigger companies are willing to adopt AI faster than say they were SaaS before this. I'm finding there's a compression in the market for demand for this kind of thing. So as far as figuring it out, like, again, I kind of go back to I got some feel for the customer, listened to some calls, leaning heavily on the CEO, who's like a great guy, like can really explain things and no ego and just we're trying to figure out the story. And then again, like what's working or what are we trying? Like I think today we announced a public beta, and what we did
Okay.
there was not dissimilar. This was like a couple months ago, and that was a good cycle for us. We basically did the friends and family outreach to everybody we knew to like, and fortunately the company has a very good network of people who are deep in the space because they come from academia and they have a ton of like real ballers who are actually doing this stuff. And so a lot of them, we wrote like a series of we had a whole launch week, but we wrote like what would be the equivalent of a really good press release, pushed to our blog and promoted on social. Social for us is mainly LinkedIn and X to an extent, but X has been falling apart as well. So for us, it's really LinkedIn now. LinkedIn in the last 18 to 24 months has really become like the only platform I think for B2B for social, but it is extremely noisy. You mentioned that, especially for AI stuff. So I think for us, when I came into this company, because it's founded by two Cal professors and two PhDs that came out of Cal, all with heavy like LLM, AI, machine learning, computer science backgrounds, thought leadership came to mind, right? As these guys are a candidate for thought leadership. The
And
other
what's
thing
like
is
the
found.
founder's role at this stage? Like, is it, are they the main blogger? Are they the main
Yeah.
salesperson, PR person? Like, how do they focus like their time? Because I'm
Yes.
sure it's limited in terms of how much they can spend with marketing versus product or other things.
That's right. That's right. And this is good. This all works, dovetails in because I can handle kind of both. I know I'm going on a longer answer here, but the CEO, the other thing they were candidate for is founder marketing because the CEO and the professor were right. One of the professors, a guy named Joey. Joey and Vikram is our CEO. So Vikram and Joey have been writing for over a year, like a Substack weekly blog they call the AI Frontier. And it's actually it's separate to our company, but it's amassed a pretty good following. And it's where they just talk about where the state of AI is and have we reached AGI or some concept, right? So they're just thinking very big and in a cerebral way. And so that exists already. And so so one thing I have to feel out, like was a CEO at Accompli, and he was great in front of people. And the CEO at HackerOne was more shy, and the CTO is more shy. But they had a lot of the CTO in particular had credibility with customers and analysts. Here, the CEO is a really good balance. His role, I would say, is he's product leader and he's founder selling still. He's at the end of founder selling. We have our first kind of rep, and then I'm pitching in a little. I'm trying not to pull myself too out of position, but I'm also selling a little. And then, he has an engineering background, of course, but someone else is running engineering and he is pretty good about like not doing more than he should, but he's doing everything kind of. When I joined, it was like, again, like Accompli actually I think I was the only person without a CS degree who wasn't building, who wasn't a maker.
I think that makes it
yeah,
so that you have like this unique perspective though, which is great, right? Like I think you end up coming in and you're the guy who should be looked to as the expert in marketing. I never tell Kevin how to write code, or at this point tell Devin AI how to write code, but I think it's similarly like, it's easy for marketers to get sucked into this trap of, well, everybody's a consumer, so everybody thinks they know marketing, and it's, being able to establish, no, here are the frameworks, here's the approach, here's how we do this. We're going to do thought leadership, and this is how you do thought leadership, right? This is how we're going to
yeah,
leverage our CEO and our founder. And so I want to talk about this thing that you've kind of talked about on your profile, and you mentioned LinkedIn, and like, tell me about creative destruction. What does that mean to you? Like, give me
yeah.
the pithy, like, if I'm a founder and I'm thinking about my first kind of marketing, go to market, how could I leverage Peter's creative destruction?
Yeah, I think it's a play on. I mean, it's a concept that now I'm blanking on who came up with it and to properly attribute it. But creative destruction is the idea that. Sorry, what am I saying on my LinkedIn? Because I think I might have tweaked that. Hold on, let me see. Oh, it's creative destruction. It is creative destruction. Creative destruction is the original term. Sorry, I had to
Yeah,
double check.
there's a German word that I can't pronounce, and it's an economic
Yeah,
concept, right? That describes
that's
a
right. That's
process
right.
where innovations replace and make obsolete older innovations. But I think it
Yes.
applies to marketing, which is, I'm guessing, where you're taking this.
Yeah, and I think it's because I work on it's the types of things I choose to work on. And I think I also am putting it up there because there is I like to challenge the status quo. There's sort of an irreverence or defiance I have built in as part of my personality that I try to kind of hide because, like it doesn't always work in corporate culture. And I just come out of 5 years at Yahoo where, by DNA, design, whatever, the innovation was in entrepreneurship is not there anymore. It's like it gets beaten down pretty hard if you try. So I think for me, it was that idea of getting back to what I really love to do, which is like, I love nothing more than to take a run at a major incumbent and knock them off. Like, I just like the David versus Goliath story. And I
We're
like
rooting
the
for you.
idea. Well, and I like the idea, and I think when I find Kevin has this, people I work like, I'm going to bet on myself.
Yeah.
I love it.
I'm not intimidated by you and your big company. In fact, you're slow. You're
Yep.
slow because of it. You have all this legacy inertia. You can't get out of your own way, and I'm gonna cut you apart. Just watch. And I love that idea because and so the creative destruction to me is like maybe it's a kung fu-ish type thing, but the energy is already there. Things are being replaced. There's cycles of replacement happening all the time, and incumbents will resist it, of course, because they're trying to push out their revenue and profit curves. But I like it when something new comes along that can make things better and it sort of can't be denied, but there's going to be resistance against it for a while just because that's the way it works. And I like to be the one who helps push it through.
That's a great
So
place.
yeah,
That's a great place to leave it, because that's it.
yeah,
You're David, and you're gonna make the next thing happen.
Yeah.
I love it.
And
Peter.
and the tools, I will say real quick, the
Yeah.
tools, this is going to help hopefully with an answer before that you might, I don't know if you want to edit this around, but when I start with a small company, a lot of it's about managing the budget. So I'm always organic, inbound. So thought leadership, SEO, content, those are always the places to start. If you have thought leadership, you can accelerate that. Paid media is not going to work well initially anyway, as you guys know the way the auction works. And Kevin's actually quite an expert in this. So you can't go into paid media because it's going to be inefficient and bleed you out. So you have to build up your brand, your story, your base, your following. You got to do it with inbound. A lot of the work, you got to be good at that anyway, because that's kind of what's available to you and what can work, and also build a foundation for the future.
I love it. Peter, where can folks find you and learn more about your work?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is an easy place to find me. I try to keep everything up to date, and you can, that's just Peter Farago there. And then, I'm on all the socials. You can also, I'm promoting a lot of what we're doing in and around AI at my company. You'll find that, through my LinkedIn. It's RunLLM. And
Very cool.
That's an easy place to start.
Awesome, brother. Thanks for coming out, and good to see you. And well, that was Peter Farago breaking down marketing 0 to 1. I mean, huge thanks to Peter for sharing all the tips and practical insights, and quite frankly, some more stories from Flurry and Accompli, and now what he's doing with RunLLM. I think hopefully that gives you a clearer picture of where to focus your energy in these kind of early days. Like, what did you think, Jason?
Yeah, this one is a near and dear to my heart as a career marketing and growth guy. Know your audience. Start with a clear understanding of who they are and your value for them, your value proposition. There's nothing more important than that. Next is iterating quickly on the brand, on messaging, whether you start with the clip art logo or not. Get to the right message for that audience and get there quickly. In doing so, you probably will use customer feedback loops. So, understanding the customer and then using that to improve the product and the storytelling. Peter's listening to sales calls. That matters, right? He understands the customer deeply. And then focus on organic inbound and thought leadership before paid. This is especially relevant in a situation like Peter's, where you're doing B2B marketing, you have larger customers and longer sales cycles. And so you want to make sure that you've got a system that works before you spend a bunch of money on ads. So that for me was the big stuff that jumped out. I hope you found it useful. If you liked the episode, please give us a like, a subscribe, share it with a founder that's wrestling with their initial marketing strategy, and we'll be back next time with another deep dive into this founder journey.
Awesome. Thanks again for listening to Founder Mode. Remember, in the beginning, it's not about complex funnels. It's about finding those first believers.